Around here, there's a bunch of crooks around here.
You ain't supposed to be in that jail, boy. Get out of there, man.
No, that's a total no, man. Vodka, man.
Is my salary going up?
Bahamian people gotta wake up.
This is my 5 cents, and I approve this message.
The government increases the minimum wage for public servants. The new U.S. Chargé d'Affaires speaks on the investment climate report. 18 drowns in waters off Andros, and the Disability Council weighs in on the newly passed disability bill. We've got those stories and more coming up tonight. I'm Dana Smith, and MD12 starts right now. Topping news tonight, a list of pay increases, benefits, and promotions are set to take place for public servants, all a part of an industrial agreement signed today between the Bahamas government and the Bahamas Public Service Union. The main increase outlined in that agreement, minimum wage. Kyle Joaquin has all the details.
Thousands of minimum wage Bahamas Public Service employees will head to the banks at the end of the month and notice an increase in their paychecks, a result of an industrial agreement recently signed between the Bahamas government and the Bahamas Public Service Union. Bahamas Public Service Union President John Pinder says in his 12 years as the union's leader, this is the fastest he has ever concluded an industrial agreement, as it only took less than 6 months. Effective at signing, all minimum wage employees of the Bahamas Public Service Union will see an increase of their annual salary from $10,700 to $11,500, an $800 raise. Pinder notes that this is the first of several good things signed in that agreement.
We were also able to bring some sort of closure to this matter of persons receiving hazard pay and risk allowance, in that the first time around when we did the industrial agreement, it was done based on the amount of time one was put into an area. We were able to get the government to agree to a fixed amount that persons would receive attached to their pay package each month. So we thought that was certainly a step in the right direction to get that matter resolved. As civil servants would have known, we had to be in compliance with the NIB Act, which forced us to now pay the right contribution since last year. And moving forward now, that will increase our pension tremendously. I think we only was able to enjoy as much as $285 a month. Once we have now paid the right contributions, we are seeing as much as, we can realize as much as $1,200 a month. And so that was certainly a very good step in the right direction. So we are real pleased that the government was able to, in spite of the hard economic times, bring some sort of financial relief to some of our members.
Then there's a disturbance allowance for all those in the Family Islands who are forced to move around.
We were able to come up with what we call now a disturbance allowance of $1,200 in the hardship. No, disturbance is $300 more a month, in addition to the rent. So where there was $700 for rent in Nassau is now $1,000, and in the Family Islands, no province is 6, the Family Islands, that'll be 9, and the Family Islands now be $1,000.
The agreement also sees increases in gas mileage and transportation allowances. Now here's how the distribution of benefits will work. The government's lead negotiator for the industrial agreement, Keith Archer.
The benefit of a lump sum of an increment is to be paid in August, by August of this year. And Mr. Pinder has mentioned it's an equivalent to whatever increment amount that you would get.
Now, Pinder says a promotions committee will also be established. He adds that Public Service Union employees who do not receive minimum wage will eventually be dealt with. But for right now, the union has to work with the government and what they can afford.
We were able to get the government to agree to the promotional committee, whereas we are able to be a part of that process to make it more transparent and ensure that persons who have always been complaining, especially those on the Family Islands and in Grand Bahama, they always feel as though they're left out of the exercise and that new province were getting the majority of the promotions. And so a more transparent way of doing this now is to actually get the union involved. Our members expect us to be able to get the most increase possible for them. sometimes we have to be realistic and know that the government push can't afford it at this time. But we do have a little clause in there that speaks to if the government taps into these natural resources and start to yield much more revenue, then we are able to come back to the table and see if we can get a little more of our membership.
This industrial agreement is a 5-year one and expires in 2018. During that time, Pinder says they will come to the bargaining table once again and seek more for his union employees. Reporting for NB12, I'm Kyle Joaquin.
The newly appointed Chargé d'Affaires of the United States Embassy, Lisa Johnson, today speaking on that investment climate report as government MPs continue to hit out at the report's findings. Johnson said the report applauded a number of initiatives accomplished by the Christie administration, but the media has focused on the negative. She added that the report is not a reflection of the relationship between the Bahamas and the United States.
The investment climate report is something we issue 80 countries worldwide. We do it every year. People who have read the report will see it commends a number of things that the government has done and a number of initiatives in this country. We are encouraging Americans and American companies to invest here. The media, of course, is going to go to the one or two negative sentences and grab it. And that's politics. I don't think it's reflective at all of the relationship between our two countries.
The investment climate statement on the Bahamas raised concerns over the reported lack of transparency and undue government interference in the bidding and procurement processes. The report also said the Christie administration failed to fulfill many of its ambitious campaign promises. Just yesterday in the House of Assembly, Parliamentary Secretary in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, Cleola Hamilton, said the report was, quote, disingenuous coming from a country whose Congress sits around and does absolutely nothing and who failed to fulfill their election promises. Foreign Affairs Minister Fred Mitchell has said the report is riddled with inaccuracies, while Labor Minister Shane Gibson has voiced concerns of his own. And Prime Minister Perry Christie has called the report inappropriate and said its authors interfered where they ought not to. He also questioned, should I be talking about how many failed promises President Barack Obama had? But both he and Minister Mitchell noted the Bahamas and the U.S. have good relations and would move past this issue. Johnson said something similar today, noting the relationship between the two countries is very strong and the embassy continues to work with the government. Among other things, Johnson said the embassy is looking to promote trade and investment in the Bahamas.
On the very general side, we cooperate very closely with the Bahamian government on anti-crime initiatives, looking at crime and security issues. We have terrific cooperation in that area. We'll be looking to increase trade and investment between the United States and the Bahamas. I also just met this morning with the Minister of Education, and education and educational exchanges between the United States and the Bahamas are of great importance to the U.S. Embassy and our government. So that would be a few of the areas that we'll be working on together.
Since assuming her duties as Chargé d'Affaires on July 9th, Johnson has paid several courtesy calls on cabinet ministers. She spoke today while paying a courtesy call on the Minister of Transport and Aviation, Glenys Hannah Martin, who also reaffirmed the relationship between the two countries.
We are expectant that the dialogue will be healthy, that it will be productive, that the relationship will go from strength to strength, and that we will seek to capitalize on our mutual interests in a way that is balanced and that is proportionately beneficial to both sides.
Well, now that the government has said it could take up to 2 years to implement a revised version of the Freedom of Information Act, the United States Embassy is offering a helping hand in that process. The act was passed in early 2012, but the previous administration never implemented it. Johnson said implementation is something the U.S. would like to see as well.
That issue actually hasn't come up at this stage in my meetings, but certainly we're interested in seeing implementation of that act. I know a number of regulations have to be put in place and some more work needs to be done on the public outreach and information campaign, and we're prepared to help support that in any way that we can.
Education Minister Jerome Fitzgerald has recently said the government has set up a committee with representatives from the Ministry of Finance, the Department of Archives, the Public Service Department, and the Office of the Attorney General. He said these stakeholders would work together and coordinate collective efforts in what he described as a major undertaking. Back in March, Prime Minister Perry Christie announced his administration would give renewed consideration to the draft Freedom of Information Act to allow citizens greater access to government information and to provide them with the tools to keep public administration transparent and accountable. Fitzgerald said despite public protests demanding greater transparency from the government, the Christie administration has nothing to hide. The Bahamas National Council for Disability is weighing in on the passage of the 2014 Persons with Disabilities Bill in the House of Assembly. BNCD President Townsley Roberts says while the bill is a major milestone, there's a lot more work to be done. Jasmine Brown has the details in this report.
Roberts says there is strength in numbers, and he insists that's exactly what's needed to make the entire country more disabled friendly. The Persons with Disabilities Bill was unanimously passed in the House of Assembly yesterday. Roberts, who is an amputee, says decades have been spent getting to this point.
Persons have been fighting for such a day for almost as long as I've been alive.
Roberts says the bill is a symbol of equal rights finally being awarded to the disabled community, which he says has been discriminated against for decades.
Too many people don't understand their plight unless, I guess, they have a family member or they become disabled. That's simple words. You know, and people taking advantage of persons with disability need to understand they're human too. Looking for the same respect the elderly, the children, disabled, the same respect we want.
The bill will, among other things, make it illegal to deny a disabled person equal access to opportunities for suitable employment. Businesses that have 100 employees or more would be required to employ a minimum number of disabled people. The bill states that not less than 1% of qualified disabled people have to be employed at such businesses. The bill also seeks to eliminate discrimination against disabled people in other areas, including housing, access to public buildings, public transport, and education. Under the new law, any building where members of the public are permitted, it would have to be adapted to accommodate those with disabilities. Building owners would be given 2 years after the legislation is brought into force to make their structures disability friendly. Roberts says making the buildings disabled friendly will probably be the most difficult aspect of the bill. Roberts called it a major milestone and recalled how he felt the moment the bill was passed.
When the word came that the Prime Minister was going to make his presentation after lunch break, we realized they planned on voting on the bill today. And I was supposed to be back to work. And I didn't let my boss know I think I need to stay for this moment. This is a historic moment. To show you how serious a moment it was, you know, you're supposed to be quiet in the gallery, there was some noise. People, that moment was exciting. It was such an enjoyment. It's like a weight lifted off your shoulder to get to this point. Persons have been sweating and pushing so hard to get this bill. Many persons have gone on and died before we get to this point. So that was just a moment that I think no one will forget.
Reporting for NB12 News, I'm Jasmine Bonamy.